I'm Mark Ramsey, and I am very pleased to share a few minutes today with Ann Hanley. Ann is Chief Content Officer of MarketingProfs.com, which is one of my favorite resources for how to do digital media in the 21st century. And she is also the co-author of a fabulous new book that you will see behind her and see in my hand right there, called, that's right, behind door number 1, Content Rules. How to create killer blogs, podcasts, videos, ebooks, webinars, and more that engage customers and ignite your business. Easily the longest subtitle I have ever read, but quite apropos. Ann, thank you so much for writing this book and for doing this for me today.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you. Well, you're welcome, and thanks for having me.
You know that my clients are primarily broadcasters, and I work a lot in that space, and that's a space which is very much in the space of publishing, as you put it, the space of content.
Right.
The average broadcaster gets, I don't know, maybe 85% of their revenue from traditional over-the-air advertising, and a lot of them are asking the big obvious question, which is, in light of that, why should I spend this effort? Why should I put in this time to create content online?
Right, right. Well, I mean, that's the question that every business is asking themselves, not just marketers, but, whether you're selling software or selling shovels or anything else. And the reality is because, if you are doing business online, if you need to market yourself online, content really does have to be a cornerstone of what you're doing. And we lay the reasons out in the book. The rules have changed. Your customers or your listeners are going to be looking for you, and they're looking to see who you are online, and they're searching basically. And so those kind of old one-way marketing communication isn't around anymore. Basically, it's all about creating content that's really going to serve as a cornerstone of your marketing, both from a content perspective, engaging with your customers, and from a search perspective as well, so people can find you online.
So, again, the average broadcaster is going to listen to this and say, but,
right.
Most of my revenue, the lion's share of my revenue comes from over-the-air ads. I mean, granted that will change in time, that will evolve over time, but right now the dictate I have from the corner office is monetize everything that I do online. And how, which is the chicken and which is the egg in this case? You don't get the monetization unless you get the mass audience, and you don't get the mass audience unless you have the content, and you're not going to be supported in the creation of the content unless you have monetization. So what message would you have us take to the people in their corner office?
Yeah, well, I mean, so broadcasters right now are already focused on creating content. I mean, in a way, they're sort of more uniquely positioned for this than anybody else because they already are publishers, right? Which is unlike most businesses.
True.
And so, the reality is that, they're already creating content. They're already matching that content to an audience. And essentially, the message of the book, and I think it's also true of your audience, is that, content does matter. It's really important to be producing stuff that's engaging and not just anything. For marketers, traditionally, that's been a very different equation. They just have been all about producing collateral, very one way, and just talking at people. So in a way, marketers need to be more like broadcasters, and broadcasters, if they want to grow their audiences, need to sort of apply the concepts that they're already doing, the stuff that they're already doing to engage the people who their listeners who they want to connect with, and apply that to the way that they're growing their business, to the way that to the way that the station itself is marketing itself. I mean.
The question that I get from a lot of broadcasters all the time is, well, I know what to do on the radio station. I don't know what to do on the website. What do I do on the website? And I don't expect you to answer that question because you're not a broadcaster, but you do have a number of rules to live by, ways of thinking, content rules for businesses to consider as they determine what, in fact, they should put on their digital platform. So what are some of those rules the broadcaster should be mindful of?
Yeah, I mean, the first one, I think broadcasters already have it nailed, except the fact that you're a publisher, accept the fact that what you put on your website, or I should say embrace the fact that what you put on your website is really what you want to use to sort of tease your customers, to sort of bring them into a deeper relationship with yourself. So that's definitely one. Another is one that I think is more of a natural for broadcasters. One of them is speak human. Really speak in very human, engaging terms with your customers or your listeners. That means losing Frankenspeak in these sort of marketing words that make no sense. You probably hear that less in the broadcasting world than I do in sort of the marketing/business world. But those are two great places to start. Another one I think is sort of a natural for broadcasters too, which is to show, not tell. I'm sorry. Yes, to show, not tell. Sometimes I mix that up and I say tell, don't show. No way. So, basically to tell the stories of people. And, I listen to NPR all the time. Broadcasters do a really good job of that, of sort of, of bringing the stories of people to sort of flesh them out, to give them bones, and flesh, to sort of, expand those concepts and to sort of make your product live in the world. So I think a lot of them are sort of more natural for broadcasters. And it's just a matter of, again, applying it in a different format, to your website versus, just the product that you have, which, in your case would be, the shows that you're putting out there.
And I guess that's the challenge, translating it into the digital platform for people that are generally unfamiliar with the rules of the road in that translation. We really have, I guess, two goals on digital platforms for broadcasters. One is to attract eyeballs to that platform, because that's how we monetize it. And the other is to attract ears to the radio station. And I'm sure you would argue that digital content can facilitate both those goals. Can you offer any ideas on how exactly we could go about doing those two things?
So say that again. So in other words,
one would be get the eyeballs on the website, and two is get the ears on the radio station via the digital platform.
Right. I mean, it's no different than the challenges that a lot of businesses have, and I think, the first thing there is to figure out, what is the goal of whatever it is that a broadcaster is going to be putting on their website. So if their ultimate goal is just to drive people to the website, that's one thing. But for very few people is that ever the ultimate goal, right? So in other words, if you're any business out there, your goal is not just to get people to your website unless, you truly are just a content site, and all you want to do is monetize them through the advertising on the website. Then that perhaps is a goal. But I think, more to the point, there's usually something else, some other behavior that you want to drive. So it's about creating momentum with that customer or that listener or, whoever the audience is. And so I guess that was the first thing, so define the goal, so you bring somebody to the website. What is it that you want them to do there? Do you want them to sign up for, to get, regular podcasts from you guys or, to download them to iTunes, for example? Do you want to get them to sort of subscribe to some of your shows through iTunes or something? Or do you want to just, remind them that, to get more engaged with the hosts of certain programs, of their favorite programs? Do you want those people, in that case, would you want your hosts of those radio programs to have like a blog and to solicit customer feedback and to increase engagement there? So there's lots of things you can do. It's just a matter of, defining what your goals are first, and that's really where that strategy comes from.
What I tend to see is that there's what you're talking about is a very strategic beginning. And what I see is a lot of tactical application. What I see is a lot of, we need a mobile application, we need a Facebook page, we need, we need a blog, we need the host to do the blog, and as if the doing of these things will invariably attract mass interest and preference from fans. And I think I would say that's not true. Right? Right,
exactly. I mean, it's like that's exactly the point. And it's so funny because, when I told people that I was writing this book, I heard, oh, that's so great because what I really want a Facebook page. Is this the book that'll tell me how to have a Facebook page? What do I put on there? And it's like, kind of, this is actually the book you want to read before you think about the what. So before you think about the tools, the fun stuff like the Facebook page, the Twitter feed, the LinkedIn profile, whatever, before you do any of that, you got to think about, what am I going to put on there and what's the purpose of it? So, yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you. Everybody loves to talk about the shiny, fun stuff because it's shiny and fun, but people don't often think through that first step. It's really, really, really important. It's not nearly as fun, but you've really got to think about, strategically, what are we doing there? What's our goal? And what behavior and momentum do we want to drive, and what momentum do you want to create?
And the other thing I think that you're alluding to is we shouldn't think of these tools as narrowly as, look, the purpose of putting content on the website is to aggregate a lot of eyeballs on that website. There should be a purpose, deeper, broader, better, than that. in order
Yeah,
to
right,
enhance relationships, motivate people to tune in the radio station.
right.
One of the things, Ann, that is almost non-existent in radio is a registered user.
Hmm.
It's almost non-existent.
Right.
We have people who join clubs to participate in contests that we call databases or we call loyalty clubs, but we really don't have people who register, as I wrote recently, they register to play, they don't register for value. Can you
Right.
talk about
Right.
that for a second?
Yeah, first of all, I think I think the way to think about all these things, and just to go back to what we were saying a second ago about tools and so on. I mean, you know, um, everybody out there, every organization, whether you're, a radio or a rock band, you've got an enormous opportunity. You've got a great opportunity to sort of talk to your customers one-on-one. And, radio already does a really good job of talking to people. They don't do as great of a job as of listening, unless it's like a call-in show or something like that. But just in terms of, kind of a mass audience. I think there's a huge opportunity there. And ultimately, it's only going to make your business better, right? I mean, you're only going to, engage with them more. You're going to be able to respond to them more, to sort of meet their needs more, which is kind of the whole goal, right? I mean, to growing anything. And so I think as long as you think of it as like an opportunity and not like, another thing that you've got to do. I mean, I know we're talking kind of like these heavy words of strategy. And, I know as a publisher, as the editor of Marketing Profs, whenever we throw the word strategy in the headline, immediately it just like the clicks go down because people are like, oh, that's so heavy. It's so hard. I don't want to do that. But 10 ways to have a fantastic Facebook page. Well, then that's something I can click on, so I totally get it. But I think ultimately, once you do that hard work, then you can sort of think about all these other fun things.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of your other issue about sort of that there's no database, essentially is kind of what you were saying, right? As I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an enormous opportunity there. I would love to have an opportunity to, like I was saying, I love NPR. I listen to it all the time in the car. I'd love to have an opportunity to engage more fully with Tom Ashbrook, who hosts the midday show there. So really to leverage some of that stuff that I think radio is already doing really well. They're already creating engaging content. It's just a matter of how do we get people to talk back to us? How do we deepen that relationship?
How important are incentives in this mix? Because a lot of radio people, for example, will be, if they're incentivized on digital at all, it's usually along the lines of page views. There'll be bonus on page views, which I think you would argue is a very shallow measure of success for digital performance. What should be the motivation structure such that the goal can be richer than simply getting more eyes on a website?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a tough one, actually. I don't know that I have a great answer for that. I think traffic is certainly something, but, again, it's kind of tying it to your goals, So I guess what I would look at is sort of more meaningful measures of expression, like how many people are signing up for things, how many people have subscribed to your, to a podcast or something like that, or some sort of download, maybe some, how many people are visiting a companion website, a companion post that maybe goes along with the show, how many people are interacting there. So looking at more meaningful metrics of actually, people getting involved as opposed to just, a simple page view. I guess that's a kind of thing that I would go for. I don't know enough about, I'm just being honest here, I don't know enough about radio to be able to sort of say this is exactly what I would do. But I think anything that kind of measures engagement, and that can be a tricky thing. But again, it all kind of goes back to, strategy and creating that momentum.
What is the role of video, do you think, in terms of content, even for a medium like radio, which is overwhelmingly built around audio?
Right. I think audio and video content is really awesome, in part because, look at what we're doing here. We're having a conversation and you're a real person to me now, as opposed to, just sort of a disjointed voice. For radio especially, I think that's true. If you can sort of, create some sort of visual to go along. So, for example, maybe a companion video that goes with, of a personality or of a guest or something like that who's on a radio show. Video is very, very powerful. And in the book, we talk about, there was a Forrester study that was done that talks about how video is like 50 times more likely to show up in a search result for most keywords than almost any other kind of content, text especially. And so it's a really, really powerful way to communicate something, both because it's visually compelling and sort of, kind of rounds out a story and so on. But at the same time, for search reasons, it's not as many people are doing video and not as many people are optimizing it well. So, there is more of an opportunity there.
Well, and that leads to a related point, a point you make in the book that I thought was wonderful, was not about repurposing content, but about the word you use is reimagining content.
Yeah, right, right.
And I think that's really an important point that people need to, that it's more of a mindset, isn't it? It's like as we create content on the air, let's say, how can we reimagine that content across multiple forms for our digital platform, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, that's kind of all the stuff that we're talking about, like in terms of, what could radio do in the web? I mean, that itself is reimagining. You're taking radio content / sort of concepts and sort of reimagining them in an online format. But yeah, I mean, what we talk about when we talk about reimagining content is that in my world, like in the marketing business world, I hear a lot about, we're going to take that and repurpose it as a newsletter article, or we're going to take, this blog post and we're going to repurpose it as something else, and like a series of tweets, or we're going to throw it on the Facebook page or something like that. And to me, repurpose always sounds like an afterthought, and so what we suggest instead. And this is kind of based on research with companies who have had more success, is to use that word reimagine, which is all about, kind of thinking at your inception of any piece of content, how is it that we can express this in various platforms? So, you may have a piece of audio content, a show or a segment or whatever. How could we reimagine that on a Facebook page? Could we do, like, say, a Q&A with the host that maybe is based on audience feedback from a blog post, something like that. So in other words, just ways that you can think about kind of, expanding on a piece of content and kind of, reimagining it in various formats, in video, so audio, video, and text, maybe a series of blog posts becomes, a longer ebook download or something like that. But there's all kinds of ways that you can sort of think about reimagining what you're doing.
And at the heart of all this, it seems to me, because every one of these steps requires incremental effort and incremental work on the part of someone who's creating content. Yeah. At the heart of this, it seems to me that there's a fundamental principle, and that is that you have to care. You have to care about your brand, you have to care about your audience, your consumers, and you have to care about deepening that relationship in the first. I mean, isn't that really, kind of a prerequisite for any of this?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And again, I think that's why radio folks who already have a respect for content in a way, it's like they're already putting out content and they already care about, content as a product. It's a much tougher sell when you talk to, say, a software company and you go in, and you tell them that you think it makes sense for them to start creating content for that. That's a little bit of a tougher sell because they're not kind of wired that way. But yeah, to your point, you do have to care. And one of the things that we talk about in the book is the fact that, at the very heart of your content is not just, the words on the page, but it's really the soul of your brand. And that's what I think is so amazing. That's why I think that, companies do have such an opportunity, because there are just so many ways that you can kind of, express through the content that you're producing what you're all about in a very sort of, meaningful, intimate way. And again, I mean, radio people already get that. Radio people already know that, content is king and content rocks. It's just about, how do we then, how do we translate that into different areas, online as well as audio.
So think about that, broadcasters. It's not your station's website. It's the soul of your brand. That's
right, exactly.
That's really terrific. Ann Handley is the Chief Content Officer of MarketingProfs.com, a great resource, I might add, and the co-author of this here book called Content Rules, also the sign behind her. And there it is. There's copies everywhere. It's a bestseller. And thank you for taking the time today.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Take care.